Perfect. We have with us Filippo. Filippo is a dual qualified counsel in England and Wales and Italy. He specializes in international arbitration. He holds a degree from the University of Florence and also an LLM from the University of Cambridge. He is very active in the tech space. He attended the Blockchain Regulator Certification Program, and he is also an administrator of Metaverse Legal, which is a community of Web3 lawyers, and hosts Web3 Thursdays, weekly webinars on Web3, where I had the pleasure to be a guest. And now I returned the invitation and invited Filippo to talk on with us about the customized ChatGPT version for international arbitration. And I will suggest to start with introducing Mike and tell us about, what is it, how it works, and just give us a broad overview about the work.
All right. Well, thank you, Mihaela, for the invitation and for the nice introduction. And thank you. And thanks everyone that joined today. So Mike is an experiment and an exciting one for us. You might guess, if you know MDisputes and the work that we do, MDisputes is the firm that I work for, you might guess where the name comes from. And if you don't know us, I invite you to check us out. And in any case, it comes from a very interesting person that happens to be my boss. And the reason for that is because, and I don't want to be too cheesy here, but just because he's fool enough to follow us in this, crazy projects that we have. So what is it? What is Mike? We call it your international dispute buddy. It's actually a GPT, so it works on thanks to OpenAI, which I'm sure almost all of you are familiar with. So the way it looks, and I'll show you in a second, the way it looks is just as if you're chatting with your OpenAI chat, so ChatGPT. And what we did was to provide some extra knowledge and some parameters to make it more relevant for the work that we do. And really, we're exploring the idea of creating an alter ego or some sort of assistant that helps us carry out our jobs more efficiently, more effectively, and just in a better way overall. Mihaela, what do you suggest? Should I just share my screen and show what it is?
Yes, I think that would be the easiest.
Perfect. Let's do that. So this is actually our web page, the web page on our website, which is dedicated to Mike. And the reason why I'm going here first is that we have an important disclaimer, which I think is important to note. Of course, the idea behind Mike, as I said at the beginning, this is an experiment. And what we have in mind is to provide a tool that allows you to have a first, a first idea about an international dispute. So it shouldn't be taken as legal advice, of course, and it should be treated carefully and just to bounce off ideas about how to treat that dispute. So if I click here, it should get me to the actual page. Nicely enough, OpenAI has made it available to everyone. It used to be available only to the premium members, but now if you want to check it out, you can just go on our website, click on the link, and then play with it. We are happy for you to play with it, as long as you, of course, bear in mind the disclaimer that I mentioned at the beginning, and just provide feedback so it gets better, and we take into account everything that you might signal to us. As a matter of fact, we've already got some very interesting feedback that we hadn't thought of, and it's just amazing how different people can use it and approach to it in different ways and provide, different perspectives. So as I said before, this is like sort of the same as ChatGPT page, but what you have here is a customized logo and the caption, your international disputes body. And the questions that are suggested here are customized. So if I wanted to try one out, unless you have any specific questions from the audience that you want me to ask, that's a bit risky, but why not? Otherwise, I can just start with one of them. So for instance, help me create a budget for my dispute and see what happens. All right, this is even more than I expected.
It performs under the high pressure, Filippo, I think.
Exactly. Well, the nice thing here, and of course we can ask clarifying questions. So delve more into specific items that are particularly interesting to us. But I think at a high level, it gives us the different items and the different things that we have to look at when we are considering budgeting for a dispute. So here, and I would agree with that, just looking at, what's your case about and what's your assessment of the case. And then we get into the actual budgeting with, suggestions about the nature of the dispute and the arbitrator. This is specified as for international arbitration, so it's focused on that. When we say international disputes body, we are really thinking about international arbitration and mediation, so ADR. I don't think it's definitely not for court litigation, although you might get some inputs on that as well. And I don't think we need to get into the details of the answer, but
perhaps Filippo, Sophie in the chat asks a very live question, and I think it's something we were going to come on to exactly at this point. Is, I suppose, what was the process of creating Mike like? And Sophie's question is, for example, where did you get the data to train it? So maybe if you can talk us a little bit through that creation process and maybe some of the data that you have fed into the OpenAI model.
Absolutely. So it's fairly easy to create a customized GPT in general. And the interesting thing is that I haven't seen many in the legal sector. The difficult part, so it's what I mean with that is that it's not technically difficult. OpenAI has made it very easy to play around with the technology. What you need to do, though, is to think about the data that you want to train the GPT on, and the safeguards that you want to be in place. And I think we're going to talk about that a little more later on. So what we did was to first select the data that we wanted, and some of that is publicly available. So you might think of rules of various institutions for international arbitration. and we complemented that with some that we created on the spot for the purpose, and some that we had and we repurposed for this task. So we gathered all the data and we gave it to the GPT, and then we sort of gave it instructions to set the tone of what it should do, what's its role, and how it should interact with the users. So, for instance, we focused very much on the fact that it should find the answers to any prompt from the documents that we uploaded, and to limit as much as possible the risk of hallucination, of course. And it does have access to the internet, so it can retrieve other information, but the user must specifically ask for that. Otherwise, the GPT will not do it on its own. And we also set some parameters. So, for instance, the data that is uploaded, so the prompts and any document that is uploaded to Mike is not used by OpenAI for the training of the model itself, which we thought was a step that was needed in order to ensure confidentiality. But we did also other things for that purpose. That's pretty much it. I don't know. We also created a very cool logo through AI as well, and gave it a name, and that's pretty much the process.
And how do you come up with the idea? Was it some feedback you received from the clients, or it kind of gives us a bit of hope that people who don't have a tech background can create that. So I'm just interested in the process before the creation.
Yes, so we do believe that AI can, be a very useful tool to enhance our capabilities as lawyers, and increase access to justice in general, and make our work just better, more efficient, and more easily accessible for clients. So this is sort of our starting point. And we're also very curious about the tech industry and the developments that are that we have in that space. So when OpenAI announced that they were opening the possibility for regular people to create their own GPTs, we were very curious, and we just decided to give it a go. It wasn't an easy process, because as soon as we started with that, we were, overwhelmed with a lot of questions. And in the end, a lot of questions that you might have right now in your mind, and that we might address, hopefully not all of them, but at the end, we just decided that it was worth giving it a try. And I think we're very happy with the feedback that we are getting. It's just an experiment, but it's a good one. And we are thinking about developing it more to make it an actual product, to take it out of OpenAI in terms of where it resides physically. So we have started a process, and we have a working prototype of a sort of Mic 2.0 that is for more as a product for our clients, that we want to further develop with them and address any concerns that they might have in using it in their daily work and daily processes.
And Filippo, when you say that you see Mike as an international disputes buddy, from a kind of from Mike 2.0, and as you build and grow the functionalities of it, is it a buddy for your clients, as in it's a first step for them, as you're saying, to if they have a question late at night, say when it's outside office hours, or whatever the use case might be, or is it a buddy for MDisputes to help you know, you and your colleagues do your work better, faster, in a more efficient way? So maybe talk us through your vision, I suppose, of it as a buddy.
Very good question. I think it's actually both. Mike, without the exclamation point, might have different vision here, but I think that for us, we are already using it as a tool to, you know, have a second opinion, maybe think about something that we didn't consider, have, you know, better drafting, or just, you know, a quick answer to a certain point. Of course, when we're discussing this, I'm giving something for granted, which I shouldn't have, and I should have addressed it at the beginning. This is just very useful as long as it's supervised by humans, it's under the control of someone that takes, you know, responsibility and takes ownership for the output. So we're not, even in one of the two scenarios that you mentioned, Sean, we don't see it as a self-standing tool that clients can, you know, interact with on their own without any supervision from us. But we do think that it might help, you know, address certain tasks in their regular processes. So, for instance, if you're dealing with a particularly difficult counterparty in a project or in a contract, you might have certain situations that come up quite regularly, and you might want to embed a process where you sort of rely on Mike to have a better first draft that goes internally to other people that then have to check it and improve it and verify it. So the idea that we're working on for our clients is to have some pilot projects with them and sort of walk them through the tool and what it does and what it does not, and then address with them different scenarios and different use cases that they might have in mind, and try to develop it more and see whether it's actually something that could make sense for them. As far as we are concerned internally, as I mentioned before, it's something that we're already using. And I think already in the form that it is now, it's an interesting tool and one that could help in very many different circumstances.
You said you shared the access to Mike to a couple of the clients and other colleagues. What was the feedback received so far in terms of what did they find it useful, what they find it concerning, or what other things they suggested to add? What is the view that you collected so far?
All right. So if I said that we have already granted them access, I was wrong. We haven't. What I meant is that we are at the stage where we are almost ready to do it, because we have a working prototype and we are just testing it internally for now, because it works differently from the mic that you're seeing now. But the feedback that we got from clients that we sort of forewarned of what we wanted to do was amazing. They're super interested, and they're really you know, looking forward to doing that, at least on paper. Then we'll see whether they actually want to use it, how they use it, how much they use it, and so on and so forth. But the initial reaction is overwhelming. It's very, very positive.
And what about your colleagues? So I understand the clients might have a different perspective, but other people working in the arbitration community, how did they find it?
Again, very, very excited feedback, but I'm not sure. So we got a few people came back to us with interesting ideas and comments, but in general, I think we need to do a better job in advertising it and having people to use it, because I think it'd just be very nice to have more people to provide their ideas and their feedback on it.
And any concerns or not so many?
Mihaela, Mike might have
Sure.
something.
Hello,
Can
Mike.
you hear me? You guys hear me okay?
Yes.
We do.
So, by the way, Filippo is the inventor. It has the name Mike exclamation point, but it's the DNA is very much the Filippo Zuti Giachetti behind it. One of the things, and I think also this is response to Sophie's questions in the chat, is that you have to keep in mind that when Filippo embarked on doing this, the idea was to do something for people who don't have sophistication in international arbitration. So, for example, how do you write a persuasive memorial, or Sophie's question about preparing for cross-examination? Those were really, I think Filippo correct. That was really not what we were trying to train this on. This was for our clients aren't going to be engaging in that. It's going to be, and I think what Filippo's talking about is how do we take this now to another level where you could use Mike and say, look, here's our contract. Here's the most recent correspondence. Here's what's the dispute between the parties. How should I respond to this letter? Or can you prepare a draft of the letter for me to consider that I can share with our lawyers at MDisputes, for example, and talk about that? It's really meant to make the arbitration process more accessible and easier for our clients. And I think I have an interesting parallel. Filippo and I participated. I teach legal writing at the Bocconi Law School in Milan. And this last year, I asked Bocconi to authorize me to include using generative AI, actually requiring my students to use generative AI in their legal writing. They had to experiment with it in different ways. And that was a separate discussion, quite interesting. But then when we also taught the same class, a similar class on legal writing or on, let's say, drafting claim letters, I did this like half-day training with some of our clients, and Filippo was there. We did that with one of our clients. I think this was before we had Mike exclamation point launched. This is telling about the uptake of these things. We had like maybe 15 people from that client. It was a small client. It's like the type of clients that we aim for, small, medium-sized enterprises. Maybe we had 15 people there, Filippo, who participated.
Yes, sounds about right.
And we ended the 4 hours, we took them through some basic, kind of writing principles, how to respond effectively. And then we showed them how to also use different generative AI to assist them in coming up with first drafts. And what was fascinating, at least to me, is that we work with this client. We now see the client now using that tool because it makes their day-to-day job easier. So I think that we would hope to have a similar uptake with Mike, that the clients make this part of their normal process when these are the clients we're dealing with, international contracts, international cases. And as Filippo said at the beginning, it just makes the whole process easier for them to understand and more accessible. As many of you know, the first time you talk to, you have a client, the first time that they're in an international case, an arbitration or mediation, if they don't have any experience there, I mean, for them, it's an eye-opening. They have all kinds of questions that to someone who's, a seasoned practitioner, you'd say, well, why are they asking that? That doesn't make any sense. Well, they're asking that because they have no real background, no real experience in the area. Anyway, I'm sorry, Filippo.
It was really helpful, I think. I think everyone is grateful for your input here. You're indirectly called, to speak here. In the meantime, I tried. I think Sophie asked a question in the chat, and I tried it out live, and this is the answer that we got.
Exactly. So, I think, Michael, you make a great point in how I see personally AI, LLMs being very, very useful is the blank page. And for somebody who doesn't work in a certain niche day to day, they maybe outthink themselves when they see the blank page and they think, oh my God, I'm going to have to think about how to respond to a counterparty, etc. And they maybe feel, oh my God, I'm going to have to ask my external advisors a very embarrassing, or what I think is an embarrassing question. How am I going to, get a first draft internally here in our company without, spending time and money contacting an expert? And I think that is something that's probably underappreciated, I would say.
Yeah. I mean, Sean,
can I just say, Filippo, I have a great example, by the way, if I can I look terrible, by the way, I apologize, but I just literally got back from an overdue flight from California. I mean, a late flight, and haven't had a chance to even walk to the door a few minutes ago. But while I was in California, one of my high school friends, her daughter has sold an apartment and has now a potential dispute over a claim over the furnace or the boiler that's in the house. And she said that the other side, wanted them to go to mediation, right? And she said, I don't want to go to mediation. It's like, we're not going to refuse that. We're just going to go to court. And I said, well, can I see the contract? Maybe I can help. I'm not going to help you out in the case, but I'll take a look at the contract and see if I can maybe help you find a lawyer in the city where I grew up. And I looked at the contract, and there's a mediation requirement, and it says the parties up, and it just shows you that many parties, again, those that don't have the practitioners' level of experience. This would be ideal. You put it in, again, this is not an international case, it's a local dispute, but that may be one of the problems where you put it in and say, look, the other side is claiming that we didn't do X or Y. This is a problem. They want to take us to mediation. What are we obligated to go? And that would be one of the things that you could, and again, I think this is the next generation that would also have, as Filippo says, the confidentiality barriers that we would put in for each client. So you could feed the contract in. I mean, that's one of the things that Giachetti allows you to do. You can put the correspondence in. And again, this is also to answer one of Sophie's questions. You would not want it so much to give you legal advice, but as to give you as an indication of, well, oh gosh, I do need to contact a lawyer. I can't just simply say, hey, buzz off. I don't want to do mediation, because it turns out there's actually a requirement. And by the way, there was also arbitration in the contract after that. And I just don't think that, and I've seen this over the course of my career. I remember one of the senior executives at GE once asking me, he says, I don't understand. Are we in arbitration, or are we going to go to court? And what he meant was, are we in arbitration? In other words, are we still negotiating and discussing things? I think he may have thought arbitration was like mediation. Or are we taking, binding legal action? And then you have to explain to them, what at arbitration, we're never going to court. We're just going to, you guys get it, I think.
Yes, but you mentioned the confidentiality issue, and Filippo said at the beginning that he took some measure to make sure that there will be no hallucination, and also that the ChatGPT model will not look for information in the internet, so kind of keeping everything enclosed. And I think the confidentiality is probably let's say, the first thing that comes in everyone's mind when we talk about this type of models. And there's also a question in the chat about it. I'm not sure if you've seen it, Filippo, about how do you see confidentiality as the most difficult part in developing AI tools for international arbitration? It's a question from Xiang Zhang. I'm not sure I'm pronouncing that correctly. So maybe you want to talk about this issue in a bit more detail.
Sure. So as I was mentioning before, I agree. First off, I agree that confidentiality comes up a lot when we're discussing these sort of things, and as it should, because of course, I mean, as legal professionals, we have a duty, and it's very important that we treat the information and material that we get from our clients as confidential. So it is a live issue, and it's an important one. What we did was, as far as the mic that you're looking at is concerned, as far as that is concerned, we excluded the possibility for OpenAI to use any prompts and data that is fed to it as part of the training material for the model. And as I mentioned before, also provided certain parameters to the GPT so that it doesn't hallucinate and do other things. But we also wanted to be a bit more confident when proposing this to our clients. So we instructed a data scientist to look into it and to provide a different version, which is still relying on OpenAI to do the actual job. So it sort of sends a prompt to OpenAI through what is called an API. So it's a call for OpenAI to carry out a certain task and provide an answer to the question, to the prompt. The main difference is that we have certain safeguards in place. So the prompts and the documents that users upload are all on a different server, and they are kept there only for the time that the user is actually logged in this new product that we have, and is deleted right after. So that's the first one. And on top of that, we can only grant access to certain users. So through their IP, we can have an IP whitelist. So only certain users are allowed to access that resource, which is actually hosted online on the web. So it's for now, that's the way it works. In general terms, I do think that OpenAI offers quite a few safeguards in terms of confidentiality. So further to allowing you to exclude your data from being put in the pool that trains the model. It's also SOC2 and GDPR compliant. So what that means, as from my understanding, is that they have to put in certain access control measures and also encrypt the data. So it's also something more that might give more confidence in using it. But since we want to take full ownership for the products, and especially with our clients, we thought that it was best to actually rely on someone that knows the technology and can do, put in extra measures to ensure that that's the case.
And then I suppose, Filippo, from the other point of view of confidentiality, and that's kind of more so what the question asked here. I mean, we obviously see litigation, especially US litigation. It's very much data driven. We're already seeing AI being used even before LLMs to kind of drive the prediction analytics, all of that stuff. How do you see, I suppose, the much more high level, high volume confidentiality of input data in arbitration as affecting, AI tools? Mike, I suppose, down the road might be affected by that. How do you see the difference there of the lack of publicly available data to train these models? Do you see it holding back arbitration-based use cases more so than you would see in litigation?
Sorry, I hadn't read the question, so
no, absolutely. I think
I went off.
It was important to clear
the
the confidentiality in terms of Mike itself, but I think this forward-looking question, I think, is a very interesting one.
Well, it is an interesting one, and I agree that there might be limitations, but I think that right now we have a lot more data than we used to in terms of international arbitration, and there's a lot actually publicly available. But the prior question, I think, is what is the purpose of what we're trying to create? As Mike was saying before, we don't really want to provide, legal advice that would require, large amount of data, very specific to international arbitration. We're not trying to be the new Jus Mundi or the like. We're trying to do something different, which is perhaps easier and like low-hanging fruit, which is just to increase the general level of the first draft internally and do that sort of things under the supervision of perhaps a lawyer. And so I think that if you're trying what we are trying to do, we don't expect to be affected by that issue that much. For other service providers that do try to provide an actual international arbitration AI lawyer, then of course that might be a very important limitation.
And speaking of the future, how do you see the field of international arbitration changing with the evolution of this type of AI tools? Do you see, I don't know, boutique law firms having a bit more leverage than big established law firms? Is this a level playing field or not? What are your thoughts on how things will evolve?
That's a very interesting question. I think that people in the audience might have a different view here, and I think it'd be interesting to have a discussion about that. And I think it really depends. So AI does have the possibility to sort of level the field a little bit. So boutique firms might exploit it and increase the quality and efficiency of their services. They might, because it really depends. There's a problem to having access to data. And was there someone that was trying to speak? No, okay. So large firms, of course, have a lot more data that they can train the model on, and they have, more resources, so they can get, something which is more efficient. So I guess that we will see that as well. But of course, being able to leverage AI, and I think that OpenAI and other providers are doing a very good job in democratizing it. So it gets easier, even if you don't know very much or very deeply how the technology works. It's still something that you can play with and get an idea on, and perhaps try to use it, within the boundaries of how confident you are with it. But so I do see AI being used a lot more, and we are already seeing clients asking for it. I think I think everyone has experienced that. It's very often a question when you are being onboarded by a new client. They do often ask what level of AI capabilities your firm has, how much you're using it, and for what purposes. And I think that's twofolded. So the question is, of course, because they want to limit, perhaps they have concerns about confidentiality or other issues that we touched upon earlier. But the other one is also because they want their lawyers to use AI and be more efficient and be, and be cheaper, actually. So Mike and I were actually thinking and asking ourselves the question whether this would become an issue in cost submissions, for instance, whether you might claim that the costs of the counterparty are completely unreasonable because a lot of the tasks that they carried out manually could have been delegated to an AI. And why not? I think it's actually a very good question, and it could come up very soon. So I think the short answer is a lot more AI will be used in the international field. I think it will be under the supervision of a human, of a lawyer, more particularly. And I think we will have an issue about the availability of data, and that might create some disparity going forward. But these are some ideas there.
Michael, please, I think you wanted to also jump in here.
No, I just agree with Filippo, but I do think that this is, I don't know if it's a leveling of playing field as much as it's allowing various players to punch above their weight, to get out and to extend their expertise. And I spent a lot of my career writing about, I have lots of materials, and we've used many of the material. You have notes, you have things that you've created about managing disputes and guiding your, the in-house teams, and explaining, to your colleagues, a lot of that are things that you can use to train AI. And I would think that, for example, Mihaela and Sophie, if there was a, law and, arbitration and technology, there's a, call it a Sophie exclamation point or something, that you probably would have among yourselves. No, a capability of creating, Filippo, I would think, because I know that there's just so much that you've created that could be used to guide, the training is, I think, is also a good word, but guiding the generative AI in this area. Because ultimately, I mean, and then Sophie knows this because she's known me forever. One of the things I've always done is I've always had, I think, an opinion. I've never been shy about, this is the human side of it, right? I've never been shy about saying, I think you should do this. Like when I would talk to our clients, say, you should do X. It's not just about, the world is this way and this is the way mediation works. No, damn it. Like early case assessment. Here's not just the way you do it, but you should do it. And those are things I think that these tools allow you to also, extend your ability to provide those views that you may have and substantiate them in a very good way. Sorry, in a way that I think that 10, 20 years ago, we wouldn't imagine that this capability we would have as individuals would be there for us. So
absolutely, a kind of institutional memory in a way, in a kind of in a tech-enabled manner. It's a very interesting proposition, I think.
Yeah, but the human part, the fact that of really providing a reasoned view. I mean, I think it really is enhancing. It's taking what you've done there and it's allowing you to amplify that. And I ask Sophie to please correct me if she thinks I've ever been shy about sharing my opinions on anything.
Speaking of Sophie,
nope,
she said. Speaking of Sophie, I think she had another question, and I suppose we don't want to take too much more of both of your time, in view of we're about 50 or 45 minutes into the session. So let's move to the Q&A part, and please, anybody in the audience, if you do have a question, type it in, and I'm sure we'll try and get to it. But Sophie herself had a question earlier on, and it was about regulation and the EU AI Act. And she wonders, what does that mean for Mike, for MDisputes, for maybe Mike 2.0, in terms of compliance with the AI Act? Have you thought about it? Is the data scientist, for example, maybe is he or she thinking about it? Is it something that when you leave the confines of OpenAI's, customized GPT, that you start to run into? Is it a hindrance maybe for innovation, for creativity at this earlier stage in building a tool like this?
So we did think about it, and we are in the process of making sure that we are compliant. I think it comes also to the question of what is the purpose, the scope, and the use of it. So it is still a question that we haven't fully answered, because it is part of the process of getting to a final product. Well, I mean to a fully developed product, because it will depend on the actual use case and to how many people we provide access to, and a number of questions. But we are of course aware of the US AI Act, and it's crucial that we are compliant since the beginning. And yes, I'm not sure I can say a lot more about that now.
Sure, absolutely. And I suppose going back then a step to something we discussed a bit earlier, when you talked about Mike as it is now, you have to opt in basically to allow allow GPT to scour the internet to supplement or an answer to a question. How have you seen that work for Mike as it currently is? You know, what does it give you in terms of benefits? What does it give you in terms of disadvantages? Does it, you know, exponentially increase the hallucinations that come out of the answers that it provides? How does connecting Mike, opting into this, you know, access to the internet, how does it change the outputs that it's currently able to give?
So right now, Mike can access to the internet. It's just that it must be the user that asks it to do it. So the answer is of course affected by the fact that Mike can go around and just get information from the web, and we don't really know how much that affects because it's specific to the prompt, so it really depends from case to case. But as a fundamental question at the beginning, we just felt that we were losing too much control allowing it to do it, and it was just something that we weren't up for. We might explore that, providing some more boundaries on, you know, the circumstances that it might do it and for what purposes. But I think in general, we just wanted it to rely on the data that we fed it. We fed, yeah, and yeah, that is. I think that the prototype that we have now is the same, but there are so many things that we could do. So already right now, you can interact with other apps. So we're talking about the internet, but it could be Word, it could be Adobe, it could be, you know, many things, and you can sort of have the Mike or another GPT, you know, undertaking different tasks on its own, which is very interesting and also a bit scary in the sense that you need to maintain, you know, supervision, but it's just, you know, something more that we can do and we can explore, and I think it's developing so fast that we just need to be aware that what we have now is just the worst version that we will have, you know, any day in the future. So it's just yeah. But to answer your question, sorry, because I digressed a lot. To answer your question, I think that we're not comfortable right now to allow users just to, you know, use it to freely use the internet and lose entirely control. It goes a little bit beside the point of what we're trying to do.
Absolutely, and I think that's probably the issue with the ChatGPT generally is nobody knows what the weighting is. It's a proprietary secret, I presume, for how you know a prompt is weighted to find the right answer in inverted commas. Mm-hmm. So if you're trying to prevent hallucinations, you have to be very careful, as you've said. So we have another question here from Aram. First of all, he congratulates you both on the great initiative. He says, I was wondering what was the one thing you tried automating/solving with Mike and found difficult? I think that's a great question. So
I think that the highest difficulty is to make the tool attractive for clients, which is our ultimate objective here. So in order to be attractive, it must be something that doesn't add work, but actually takes away, you know, work. And so it must be embedded in the processes and be seamlessly integrated in what they're doing to provide an actual benefit to them. So I think right now, having a tool which is completely separate and requires the user to access a different website, go there, provide an input, think about it, and so on and so forth, is very useful, but has a lot of limitations. And most of all, it's not something that the user might go to every time and provide a consistent, you know, output, which is something that perhaps is very important for what we're trying to achieve. So, for instance, I'm thinking of a regular project, or as we were saying before, correspondence with a difficult counterparty. You want to be consistent with that, with the use of the tool that is enhancing your writing and so on and so forth. Because if you're not, you're completely losing the purpose of that. So I think a big challenge is to make it attractive for the users, and that means to make it easy and accessible. And if I may, I see that Sophie brought something very interesting, because she's talking about a human supervision protocol. So as I don't know if Natasha is still in attendance, but we are part of the IBA, a working group for IBA on AI and mediation. Still here, so she might want to say something here. I don't know. I'm not putting you on the spot, Natasha, but just to say that we're actually working on the idea of creating a protocol so that it makes it easier for people to rely on AI. That is for mediation, not for arbitration, but I don't think we're only discussing arbitration here. So the idea is that if we have a protocol, people might be more confident that if they actually take every step in that protocol, they are doing the right thing, even if they don't have a deep understanding of the technology, which is a very high burden for people. You know, if you're saying, well, you need to make sure that your data is not being leaked or not being used somewhere else. How am I supposed to know? I mean, I'm not a data scientist. I'm not going to look into. So there are certain things that I can do and I should do, but it's it's very difficult to get to the bottom of that. So and Natasha might want to correct me here, but what we're trying to do is to create a protocol that makes it easier for people to do that with confidence.
No, nothing to correct. No, you hit it, Filippo. That's exactly what we want to do. And I just think that there's a slight nuance there, which is a nuance which is complicated in terms of we are looking at it from the mediation perspective. And so that means that certain, let's put it this way, legal concepts, arguments, and evaluations are more in the background, more with the parties, more with the counsel, less with the mediator. So there's a difference perhaps in the user perspective. An arbitrator is, again, a different issue. And at the same time, something that I'd like to highlight in addition why it's important to make people comfortable with this is because they are, to the best of my knowledge, there's big disputes if you look at numbers, small disputes, but at the end of the day, they're relevant to usually each of the companies, no matter what. And that means they're trusting someone, usually it's counsel, with their dispute. And I think it's really a question of also learning to trust, and under what circumstances to trust AI and, other systems to assist them to find, for example, a good assessment, the right strategy, what would work for them. And I do think that this kind of tool is really, you mentioned level playing field earlier. It does level the playing field, perhaps less between law firms, I would say, but between users. And I think that would be a huge advantage already, just to give users a bigger perspective so that they can get a better sense of what their possibilities are and come to their lawyers better informed, because I think that's what the future is going to be for lawyering as well. I hope and I assume that we will have better informed clients coming to us. And you see, that's a risk, Filippo. If you ask me to say something, I start talking, so I'm going to stop again.
It was awesome. Thanks a lot. Thank you, Natasha.
Thank you, Natasha. Perhaps maybe we'll end on a question from me, which I suppose Filippo and Mihaela and I have had prep discussions and looked at Mike previously, and I think it's a wonderful initiative. And I suppose what really struck me is, and I'd love to get Filippo and maybe even Michael's thoughts on it, is from a dispute avoidance point of view from users. We've kind of skirted around that question already, I think, in the session. But I think it's very interesting, especially when we talk about mediation, we bring in things that are not non-binding or, you know, pre-dispute even. How powerful do you think AI will be to prevent disputes that were easily preventable, but for, you know, the lack of tech, basically, is I suppose my question.
Can I jump in on this, Filippo? If you and Natasha has heard me on this already, and that is that I was fortunate to moderate the AI panel at ICA. It was last month or the month before in Hong Kong, and we spent a lot of time preparing for that session. We spent a good 6 months with them on. It was great, and one of the things that we did though is we also surveyed the what is going on with AI in mainland China, and we spoke with the Secretary General of the Shenzhen Court of International Arbitration, which is not SAIC like CIAC, it's the SCIA is, you know, sort of court. And what they do, they've been using AI already for a number of years. I think they began using it, I mean, like, and they do thousands of cases of international arbitrations. And what they do is they use it in a way they call templates. So they you know, and it's amazing. An arbitrator, when the arbitrator gets appointed, they will almost in some cases get a mostly completed award that just contains all the sort of background, the parties, how the process, the procedural history, a lot of the things that tribunal secretaries often write in awards. That's all written out. What's lacking is the dispositive portion or the reasoning. And the AI that they're using is even developing more and more in that based on what the parties' submissions are. We were told by the Secretary General that among the discussions with the leading Chinese institutions, they think in the next 2 to 5 years that they may be at the point where, again, by the way, they can't do the thousands of cases that they have without the support of AI. You know, they wouldn't financially be able to do it. So it's become critical to their ability. But where they predict that things are going to go is they think that in 2 to 5 years, that a lot of their caseload is going to get pushed to relying on their databases to provide parties with predictions of outcomes or suggested outcomes, and then encouraging them to negotiate or mediate. And the reason they think that is, one, they see their own technology and their cases growing in that direction, but they're also being pushed there by the courts. And that's why I think it's a good reminder that when we talk about international arbitration, we don't exist in an island. I mean, the courts are also going to be developing and implementing a lot of these initiatives, right? So if the courts begin to drive expectations where you can get a quick answer, you can get a prediction, you can then negotiate with the other side, then I think culturally, we in the international arbitration community also need to think, well, we're going to need to adapt, and just in order to continue to exist, to remain a viable activity next to the courts. As a rather long-winded explanation, but and Natasha knows this, that I really think that AI is going to drive, this would be my prediction today, will drive more consensual dispute resolution. I don't know if Natasha, you want to mention also one of the initiatives that the IBA has taken on in that regard.
No, Mike, I just want to add, I do fully agree. And I think that this is the thing. It's going to develop, it's going to establish itself. And with establishing it and with the more comfort people have, and that's what we want to do also with the IBA, to make sure that people are comfortable with using it, I think the more it's going to work and take off. And it's something, as with so many, you know, Lord knows, they walked ahead with a flag in front of steam engines way back when. You know, this is just going to happen. Let's face it. And I do think it's helpful because there are disputes out there that are, let's put it this way, that have a pattern, that are repetitive. And I think for them, it is going to be helpful. There's still going to be plenty of cases that are, I don't know, trailblazing, groundbreaking, with, you know, precedents being created, and those are probably outside the scope. They will use some of the AI technology, but there's plenty of cases out there where this is going to be helpful. And Sean, to answer your question, yes, I do think there's going to be a change there. I think it's going to start impacting, and it might really help dispute prevention as well.
Thank you, Natasha. Thank you very much, Michael, as well, for very fulsome response. I think it's very interesting. Maybe it's as I can see Mihaela's eyes lighting up when you mentioned this this Shenzhen institution. Maybe we'll have to have a future webinar with someone from their institution.
I'm sure they'd be pleased to do that.
Great. So I don't want to hold anybody back from their lovely summer evening. So I wanted to thank Filippo, thank Michael, thank Natasha, thank Sophie, thank the rest of the people who asked great questions, and obviously thank Mihaela for co-moderating this session with me. The full recording will be available on YouTube in the next week to 2 weeks, and definitely stay tuned to the arbtech.io website for all upcoming webinars, and stay tuned to the LinkedIn page where we consistently post different topical updates, share articles, write things ourselves. So thank you very much for a great session. It was a pleasure to speak to you all, and hope to see you again soon.
Thank you all.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye-bye.